Thank you for being here this morning. My name is Erika Strassburger. I'm a member of Pittsburgh City Council, and I want to welcome everyone to the Fred Rogers Studio in the City County building. Today, we're here not only to talk about infrastructure, but to talk about clean energy and the clean energy future and clean energy vehicles that we're all here to support, and the reasons why we support it. I'm thrilled to be here the day after the U.S. Senate has voted to begin negotiations on infrastructure and all of these types of items, because finally we're getting past the point when Infrastructure Week is just a punchline to a joke. We're actually getting to really working on infrastructure, which is exciting, I think, for all of us, whether you're at the local, the state, or the federal level. And so I am pleased to be here and to be joined by some of my colleagues and partners at the various levels of government, plus really outspoken and really effective advocates for what we're here to talk about today, which is clean energy and clean electric vehicles. So I am pleased to really just kick things off by turning it over to Representative Mike Doyle, one of the biggest champions for clean energy and for infrastructure for this region. I'll turn it over to Congressman Mike Doyle, who's joining us by Zoom. Thank you, Representative, for being here.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to join you today, and also State Representative Austin Davis and Vanessa. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but things are finally getting busy down here in Washington, D.C., and Congress is still in session. But I'm glad we've gathered such a great group of people to talk about how investing in infrastructure and clean transportation is not only good for our environment, but it's great for workers in our region's economy. Creating a cleaner transportation system is key to the future of our region. And as we all know, the world is getting hotter and we are experiencing more droughts, wildfires, and severe weather events because of climate change. And with transportation accounting for 1/3 of all emissions, it's clear that we need to act now to reduce transportation emissions. This will not only help in the fight against climate change, but will have an immediate impact locally as air pollution decreases and local heat islands are made cooler. There are efforts we can make federally and locally to achieve this, both in the private sector and in government. And I'm pleased by how proactive the Port Authority and the city of Pittsburgh have been when it comes to reducing emissions, growing transit, and cleaning up our transit fleet. In fact, Port Authority recently received a $5 million federal grant to purchase more electric buses for their fleet. And at the federal level, we need to continue providing funding for resources that our communities can use to clean up their transportation systems. Specifically, on the electric vehicle side, the federal government needs to continue funding programs like the No Low Emissions program that helps communities purchase electric buses, but we also need to invest in the charging infrastructure needed to power all those new buses. Port Authority has been clear that they need more charging stations and facilities that are better suited for electric buses. And as part of any infrastructure bill we pass, we need to make significant investments in charging equipment and helping transit agencies build the facilities they need for this new generation bus fleet. The good news is that the House of Representatives has already done that by providing billions in funding for electric vehicle charging in the INVEST Act. Now, you all may have heard that the Senate has begun negotiating a bipartisan infrastructure package, and they came to an agreement yesterday. Now, while the bill is not as ambitious as some had hoped, it is still the largest investment in infrastructure in over a decade. And it includes a lot for transit and for clean transportation. Specifically, it includes $39 billion of new investment to modernize transit in addition to the regular formula funding, $2.5 billion in zero emission buses, $2.5 billion in low emission buses, and $7.5 billion to build out a national network of EV chargers. Now, that's just the electric vehicle side of the equation. Additionally, a great way to reduce emissions is to make service improvements and reduce individual car use and traffic congestion. Again, our region has been proactive at investing in better modes of transportation that are cleaner and more equitable for low-income communities, the elderly, and those with disabilities. Just in the city of Pittsburgh, for example, We have worked to cap I-579 with a new park to reconnect the Hill District with downtown. And this year, I've been able to include specific funds to upgrade the street grid and transit facilities on Bedford, Wiley, and Center Avenue in the Hill District, upgrade North Avenue, and repair many of the steps around the city to ensure that people can easily get around via transit, bike, or walking. Hopefully, we can get funding for these projects across the finish line. But in any case, they go to show that the city and the community has been focused on creating better and more sustainable transportation futures. The biggest project that will enhance transit in the area is the Bus Rapid Transit project. And I was able to secure $100 million to build out the BRT line between downtown and Oakland, ensuring that there is reliable and accessible transit between those communities. Running electric buses on this line will combine all of the great aspects of efficient transit with the clean transportation future, and is the kind of investment we need to continue to make in Pittsburgh. The infrastructure bill that's being debated in Congress also includes billions for upgrading our roads and bridges and providing funding for passenger rail and transit agencies. All this together will allow our region to build out a transportation system that will move people more efficiently in a more sustainable way. And that provides jobs, economic growth, and reduces pollution. I applaud the efforts that the Port Authority and many of the communities in the county have made. And as we work to pass an infrastructure bill in Congress, we will be able to provide the resources to build upon the successes that we've already achieved. I want to thank you all for having me today. I look forward to the discussion. And with that, I will turn it back to Erika. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. We're so grateful that we have you in Washington, D.C. fighting the good fight every day, and for the funds that you've brought back to the city of Pittsburgh and to the region, like the cap, like the I-79 cap, and the investments in clean infrastructure that you mentioned, always fighting for the region. Next, I am so pleased to introduce Representative Austin Davis, who has been another outspoken advocate in favor of clean energy, clean jobs, and improving our environment and our health for the communities that he represents. Representative Austin Davis.
Well, thank you, Councilwoman Strassburger, and thank you, Congressman Doyle, for your leadership on behalf of all of us down there in Washington, D.C. I have the privilege of representing the 35th Legislative District here in Allegheny County, which consists of the Mon Valley region. But in addition, I'm also the chairman of the Allegheny County House Democratic Delegation here in Allegheny County. And I serve on the Transportation Committee as well as on the board of the Port Authority. So I wear a number of hats. And I can tell you clean energy, clean transportation, and clean jobs is absolutely vital to our future as a region. Pittsburgh is a leader in the development of clean, efficient, and electric vehicle options. The Allegheny County Port Authority, Transit, e-buses, and Duquesne Light have partnered to add more electric buses to the Port Authority system. And much of this was funded through the grant that Congressman Doyle mentioned from the EPA. Our agency, the Port Authority, just announced their long-range plan, which calls for a fully zero-emission fleet of vehicles and buses by 2045. This is not going to be possible without federal help. So the infrastructure and transportation bill that Congressman Doyle and Senator Casey are spearheading down in Washington is going to be critical to helping us meet that goal. Additionally, we know poor communities often rely much heavier on public transit and often tend to have the most negative impacts from environmental issues. The area that I represent is an environmental justice area, and we know by taking cars off of the street and getting more people on transit will create a better economy, and cleaner buses will absolutely go a long way in improving our air quality in our region. Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh in particular could capitalize on a bigger federal investment in clean energy, including electric vehicle infrastructure, as we continue to build out across our region to encourage more electric vehicles. So the clean energy economy will ultimately provide sustainable and family supporting jobs, not just for our region, but for all Pennsylvanians. and the transportation sector in particular provides unlimited opportunities to create economic growth in our region. So I want to thank my colleague, Councilwoman Strassburger and Congressman Doyle for their advocacy. Once we get this transportation infrastructure bill across the finish line, I think we will immediately begin to see dividends paid on those investments here in Allegheny County and across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Davis. And now I'm so pleased to introduce Vanessa Lynch, representing Moms Clean Air Force. Like I said, been really outspoken and very, very effective advocates in favor of everything we're talking about today, especially the way that that clean energy and clean transportation relates to public health. So, Vanessa, I'm so pleased to introduce you today.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Lynch, and I'm a field organizer in Pennsylvania for Moms Clean Air Force. Our organization represents 96,000 moms and dads united against air pollution to equitably protect our children's health. The transportation sector is the largest source of climate warming pollution in the U.S. And to solve the climate crisis, we need to shift our cars, trucks, and buses to 100% electric. And we absolutely need our electricity to be 100% clean. From 2010 to 2020, Pennsylvania experienced 37 extreme weather events, costing the state up to $10 billion in damages, illustrating the increasing financial burden climate change is becoming for Pennsylvania's families. The people of Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania deserve clean air, and we need bold and ambitious investments in clean vehicles and the supporting infrastructure to accomplish this goal. I'm proud to say Pittsburgh ranks as one of the top 10 best U.S. cities in which to own an electric vehicle. As such, Pennsylvania is well placed to expand our use of electric vehicles and the supporting infrastructure while making sure there's equitable transportation access for all communities. Equally important, children riding school buses, daily commuters, truck and local delivery drivers, and residents near major roadways and other pollution hotspots will benefit from the better air quality afforded by electric transportation. Electric vehicles produce zero local tailpipe pollution, and they protect our health. With more than 210,000 children and 1.1 million adults suffering from asthma across Pennsylvania, bold federal investments in transportation electrification can help to clean up the air so our children can breathe a little easier. Low-income communities and communities of color bear the brunt of air pollution and the climate crisis. By investing in clean transportation infrastructure, we would reduce harmful pollution. But we need to make sure that there's equitable access to clean transportation and that clean air benefits are realized by low-income communities and communities of color. Nationally, Black youth are 10 times more likely to die from asthma than non-Hispanic white youth. With approximately 25 million children a day riding school buses to school in the U.S., most of these buses being dirty diesel engines, spewing pollution that causes cancer, triggers asthma attacks, and makes climate change worse, clearly electrification of our school buses is an amazing opportunity. And as a school board member in the greater Pittsburgh area, I can in fact tell you that this is particularly concerning that our children experience and are exposed to these emissions. With the transportation sector now the largest source of carbon pollution in the U.S., supporting investments in clean transportation infrastructure is one of the best ways Congress can help fight climate change. I urge representatives like my own Representative Connor Lamb to continue to lead in their support of an infrastructure plan that addresses the climate crisis. The infrastructure plan must be aimed at encouraging clean energy growth and the electrification of vehicles in order to equitably improve public health for all Pennsylvania families. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. And, I really just echo everything that's already been said before. We at the City of Pittsburgh are proud of the status that we have right now. We have been making efforts to become a friendlier city when it comes to electric vehicles and clean transportation. And even to the extent of removing the number of cars needed to travel on our roads. Even as we aim to grow our population, we want fewer cars on the roads. Despite our skinny and windy and hilly roads, we want to have alternate ways to travel on our roads, which includes clean buses, which includes biking and walking, and being able to do so comfortably. And because of our work, we are now not just about the actual mode of transportation, but but actually taking those who are still driving, and for whom that is the most convenient way to travel, electrifying that, making it easier for people to drive electric vehicles. And now we are ranked one of the top 10 cities to own an electric vehicle, thanks to its charging availability. And we are continuing ourselves to try to lead by example as a city with our own fleets, with our own vehicle fleets when it comes to parking attendants, or when it comes to the big bucket trucks that are servicing our city. Those are increasingly electrified and running on electric rather than diesel or gasoline. And when we're talking about infrastructure, we know that roads are important. We know that bridges are critically important. But also a big part of that is meeting our nation's climate goals and reducing air pollution and improving public health and achieving environmental justice. And that comes down to a different way of thinking about infrastructure. I am so pleased that the time of austerity, of federal austerity, is reaching an end. We haven't seen investments, big, bold investments from Congress since Reagan was president. And now we're starting to see that again. But the types of investment, I'm so pleased to see that the types of investment are the conversation around it is starting to change. We are seeing investments in not just bridges and roads, we're seeing investments in priorities that will help to secure a better future for our children than if we remain the status quo. Because as we've heard before, pollution from vehicles disproportionately harms low-income communities and communities of color, leading to increased rates of asthma and respiratory illness. No parent wants to have to rush their child to the hospital during an asthma attack. It is one of the scariest things you can possibly think of. And yet, this region ranks higher than many other regions across the country when it comes to childhood asthma. So although we're making progress in the region, although we're making progress in the city, we need to keep on working to improve public health and clean energy jobs for everybody. And a lot of people don't realize that the city of Pittsburgh, as just an entity itself, doesn't have the same type of capabilities to either find revenues or to, whether it's from new taxes or raising taxes, we just don't have the power to do that and find new revenues that way. It's critically important that we have partnerships with the state and with the federal government to receive funds to be able to make investments where we need it. And that's why, again, I'm so pleased to see Congress really digging into both the kind of so-called hard infrastructure and the human infrastructure that we need to move our region forward. It will benefit our children's health, everybody's health, improve our air, and will protect us from a future buffered against climate change, the effects of climate change, while also producing many more jobs in the sector than I think people even realize. So thank you all for joining us today.